Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Today, I want to talk to you guys about hijacking. Hijacking. What is it? What does it mean? What does it look like? Why and how are we potentially open to being hijacked? And how can we maybe even spot when somebody else is being hijacked? Thank you. So, first and foremost, I want to give you guys an image of how I understand hijacking, because for some people, images work really well. So this is actually how I see it visually in my third eye. Imagine an octopus with tentacles, and imagine that you have this big auric field around you. You've got all of your energy bodies. Now imagine that there are holes in your auric field, in those subtle bodies. And those holes are there because of trauma. They're there because of manipulations, resentments we might have, internal splits we might have, disconnection from source, disconnection from self, victim-victimizer dynamics, blame games, hero-villain, different ego pathologies playing out, expectations we have on other people, blatantly ignoring or denying reality, being out of reality, powerlessness programs, and programming in general, which literally lives in your auric field. And those splits, or those places where you are not, where you have been separated from truth, create rips or holes in your subtle body. This is the way that I want to choose to explain this today from an energetic perspective. Now imagine that through those holes there are almost like these tentacles, like octopus tentacles, that can basically fit through each one of these holes, and then through that begin to puppet or operate a person's system through those holes. Now the person themselves is going to have likely no idea that this is even happening. They will be totally unaware of this because they're unaware that the holes in the field exist in the first place. So if you don't know that the holes are there, then you certainly, I know this is a little bit sexual looking, but then you're certainly not going to know when something else goes to fill that hole and operate through you. In fact, what usually happens is that the ego actually identifies this foreign entity as itself. So if the ego identifies with it, what's going to happen when you try to point out that there's actually an entity operating through that person? They're going to get defensive because they've identified with it at a subconscious level. So how can we start to recognize when other people are hijacked or when we're being hijacked? It probably starts with ourselves, right? Because we didn't come here to point out what everybody else is doing. However, it can be very helpful to understand who is operating out of hijacking and who is not, because that gives you a lot of information about how you want to interact with that individual. So I've done some posts about reading codes in people or reading the field. This is kind of like what I'm talking about. Now, some people perceive this at a visual level. Some people can simply sense in the character field or in the person's field that there's something that's distorted or off. You've probably done that yourself. You've clicked on someone's story or something and something just didn't sit quite right with you. Chances are that's because that person is operating out of a program and they're not fully sovereign, not fully embodied in themselves, and that's what feels just a little bit off. So usually when a person is hijacked, they are very solidified in one particular perspective. And that could be about one subject, right? They could have all the rest of them could be totally sovereign, but we might have one or two or maybe three areas where we haven't cleaned up the gunk in our lives. We haven't actually taken the light of our consciousness and gone in there, so it leaves us open and susceptible to being manipulated and used. Why this is so important is because we are in the middle, and we have been in the middle of very heavy psychological programming. And that I'm not just talking about this year and last year. I'm talking about from the moment that you were born, you have been programmed. And some of that was unconsciously just from your family because they were brought up in the same programming system. But where did those programs originate from? A lot of them actually have a very conscious intention behind them. So I just did a post the other day about how the law of oneness is being misunderstood so that people in the spiritual field just think that everything is a part of themselves. They think that evil is a part of themselves. So we have to kind of get into this if we're going to talk about hijacking, because a lot of people don't want to hear this, or they don't want to believe that this is true. But there are entities that you cannot see, non-physical entities, that will utilize your energy, that will find the holes and will puppet you. So I think what happens on a lot of people's spiritual journey is that they reach a point in the very beginning where they realize, and they have to start taking responsibility for themselves. So teachers who teach things like everything outside of you is a reflection of yourself, they're not wrong. And a lot of people, including myself on my own journey, needed that information because I was trapped in a victim dynamic for so long, victimizer, for so long that like I actually didn't realize that other people were a reflection of myself. But that took me years to integrate that. And I still recognize that that's true. And I use that principle in my life to continue to heal and integrate. That being said, there are also entities and beings that operate and create outside of the law of one and outside of a pure connection to source. So what we're calling evil, it is actually quite intentional. And that's why we have to be very vigilant and discerning and aware of where these programs are coming in and where our holes in our field are to be filled by those programs, because it's intentional. You have to understand that the society that you were raised in, it's like, I think a lot of us reach this point where we realize like everything that we thought was actually a lie. Everything that we were taught is actually a lie. We live in a fallen system. This is a fallen matrix. Everything here, I know everything here is infected. I'm going to be honest. And a lot of the other dimensions have also been infected. A lot of symbolism is being used because it communicates to the subconscious mind. And this world is literally founded on symbols. So symbols rule everything. So it's really important to understand how intentional some of this stuff is. So it's not like, oh, it's just disconnection, it's just a little bit of narcissism, it's just a little bit. No. It is seriously scary psychopathy and dark arts and the occult, which have been preying on and feeding off of people's consciousness. And I talked about this in another video. Why would they have to feed off of your consciousness? Why would those tentacles have to come in and puppet you and then siphon energy off of you? They have to do that because they're not creating from eternal life and source code. They're operating outside of that. They don't have a life force that naturally feeds them. So, when you're listening to this, notice if this causes you to go into a victim program. Like, oh my God, these entities, I have no control. I'm going to be infiltrated and I'm going to have these entities attached to me. Just slow down. You already have entities attached to you. We all do. It's just to what degree. So it doesn't have to put us into a victim mode, but it can empower us to continue to look at where are we compromised? Where could somebody else get in and shake us up and shake our emotions around and stir us up like a mixed salad? Because that's where we're going to be targeted. Garrick says, I'm feeling defensive, to be honest. Yeah. Well, look at that. Be with the defensiveness. Like, why does it bring up defensiveness in you? Because there's a part of you that doesn't want that in your field or doesn't want to believe that it's true. I'm not here to convince anybody of any sort of ideology. It's up to every individual to see this for themselves. What I'm talking about, though, can also be understood not from just a spiritual perspective, but it can be understood from a straight up just human to human perspective. Like, where you're not healed is where you're going to be ruled and controlled by other people. So other people will rule and control you just as much as other entities that you can't see, but you can feel. So let me see if I can give you some examples. Okay, here's an example of a place where somebody could be hijacked. So let's say you have a desire for something. You want to be a famous artist. You want to be an artist of some sort. And you're so focused and zeroed in on that one thing. And then let's say something else comes into your field, a truth about the art world or something like that. But you're so focused on this thing that you refuse to acknowledge the reality of something else that could actually shift your internal perspective about what it is that you want to do. But you won't do it because you want what you want. And you've already decided what you want, so you're not willing to look at something else. That's a place where you are unable to take in new information because of what that new information could do to what you actually believe you desire. That's one example. Another example could be you're disconnected from source. This is like a super simple example. So let's say you're somebody who you don't know, you don't believe that there's this higher collective consciousness and you're super cut off from that. That is a way that something can come in and then begin to manipulate and play with your mind and play with your body because you're not sovereign and you're not connected. And where there's been a severance, there is space for something to come in. So wherever there's been a disconnection or a fragmentation, there's no, how do I say this? There's no cohesion. And it's like there's a break in the chain, there's a break in the linkage between you and yourself, or you and God, or you and the truth. And that's where this starts to weave its way in. If you're not connected to your internal guidance system, to your emotional system, perfect place to be hijacked. Perfect place to be confused, even. about what's happening around you because you don't even know, you're not even connected to how you feel. So this is a big issue because we're in the emotional dark ages still. People don't know how to deal with they don't know how to deal with their own emotions. They don't even know how they feel part of the time. And we have a bunch of kids running around who were never taught how to emotionally regulate themselves. So if they couldn't regulate their own emotions, then what do? They just suppress them. Well, if you're not in touch with your emotions, then that means you're not connected to truth. And that's a big problem. Then you don't have the ability to discern internally. And then that's a place where you can also be manipulated. Let me see. I think that's it. So, it's really up to every single one of us to continue to deprogram ourselves and to recognize where the holes, where are we leaking energy? Where are we not sovereign? Where are we not in control of ourselves? And I don't mean control in the sense of like dominance. I mean control in the sense of ownership. Where are we not owning ourselves, our emotions, our body, our spirit, our mind? Because anywhere where we are not in full ownership of ourselves is a perfect place for somebody else to be. So, love you guys so much. I hope you're having a wonderful day. And I'm recording a video today for a program that I'm working with somebody in. So that'll be up on YouTube within the next day or so. It's a life's work. Just remember that. It's not about sealing up all the holes right now. We gotta do it right now. Just accept the fact that we all have attachments to some degree. We came into this life already kind of like, it's like you came out and then they bashed your kneecaps in and then that's where you were starting at. You started at the starting line with broken legs. So just know that it's a life's work, and every moment is an opportunity to see where we are compromised. Because when I say the word compromised, I mean, where have we externalized our authority? If we are dependent on anything outside of ourselves to make us feel better, to tell us who we are, to tell us how we should feel, what we should do, we're compromised. That's not to say we can't take information in, but there's a difference. So, and I'll be talking about this way more in depth in my workshop, Dissolving Your External Authorities, which there is still a couple more spots left. So check that out if you're interested. That's going to be Saturday, I believe, the 31st. Yeah. Okay. Bye, guys.